way, and a little bit of those thoughts on whether there's irrational exuberance, to quote our friend George Will, here among the Republicans. Here's Chris in New York.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Cuomo. We appreciate you here at NewsNation giving us a look. This is a 2-hour edition of our show due to the major moment that we're all living together. And, of course, our coverage of the Republican National Convention underway in Milwaukee. We're going to be dipping in as warranted. You got Ramaswamy, you got Haley. So when the big shots are in there, we'll dip in and see what they're saying. Now, you got to cover the convention. In fact, there was already a viral moment today that we're going to get to soon as proof of what we don't want to be, of what this moment is supposed to be capable of changing. However, there is intrigue on both sides of the game after Saturday's horror. Former President Trump has a chance to use his tragedy to pivot. That has Democrats worried, more worried about Biden and whether he is right to counter what they're now up against. And we have the latest point of conflict. So what do you say? Let's get after it. The question is, who will make the most of this moment? The answer is whichever side or whomever decides, acts, gains acceptance for doing the right thing right now. If you're like me, you were shook by Trump's twist of the head that led to a twist in his fate. And I am desperate for direction to a better politics. It's possible if Trump or Biden or enough of you or people in my business decide to do the right thing right now. Now, the easy part is the second part, the timing. Right now, tonight, I'm ready. You're ready. The country keeps telling anyone who will ask them they want better leaders, better dialogue. It's the first part. What is the right thing? Depends. For the Democrats, there is now another round of anti-Biden energy. The latest polls showed less movement post-debate than expected, to be honest. But Biden is down a couple of points overall, even with the huge registration advantage that Democrats have. Remember, he beat Trump by some 7 million votes overall, but he's also down where it matters. Scary margins if you're a Democrat. So you have Democrats asking, how can Biden make it better in the time that's left? So the latest problem focuses on the DNC meeting early to certify Biden as the nominee. Now, why would they do that? Well, originally, there was good reason. The state of Ohio had a weird rule about when a nominee needs to be certified for their ballot. That date was before the Democratic convention at the end of August. So they were going to meet early before the deadline. Makes sense. However, new fact. The Ohio governor changed the rule. So there is no need for Democrats to meet early. But they still are. Why? I told you the answer to that question was going to be a problem, and I told you over a week ago. Do you remember this? So they don't still need to have that meeting, but they are. Why? Because Biden team has a plan. Make it to that meeting, and they will essentially codify him as the nominee before the convention. Didn't listen now, but didn't listen then, but they are listening now. And in the wake of Trump rising, bloodied but unbowed, some Democrats, not a majority, maybe 50 reportedly, so less than 1 in 5 Democrats in Congress, so nowhere near enough to make a difference, but absolutely enough to make noise that gets magnified by the media that made it a top story, and here I am talking about it. So what these dissenters want is to stop this early meeting and wait for the convention. Sounds right, but what is the right thing? It depends on what you see as the virtue involved. And by that I mean the Democrat case against Trump is that he has bad intentions toward our democracy, right? If you boil it down. Look at what he did on January 6th. Look at what he did in Georgia. Look what he did and still says about the election being rigged. Friendly judges can dismiss a documents case, but they can't erase the reality. And yet, what message would the Democrats be sending to the 15 million or so of their party members who bothered to participate in the sham that was the Democratic primary system? How is that not undemocratic? So you have me believe that I'm part of a process. I go out, I basically got to vote twice for this guy now. I go out and vote, and now you're going to switch him. And you say that Trump is the problem because he wants to attack the democracy. Now, is it the same thing? No, but it kind of is. And perception is reality in politics. My take is that the right thing for the Democrats is not so much this fascination with the who, but the why. Sure, Biden's fitness is a problem. I've said it early, I've said it often. But Trump has plenty of problems as a candidate also, and so do the other Democrats in the mix. I know the media and the polls suggest that anyone but Biden can beat Trump. Listen, that will change as soon as another is picked, and picked at by people like me. Besides, plenty worry that Trump will have legend status on the right after Saturday, and they are motivated two ways by that. Some are more motivated to come out to stop him. Others may lean his way. So do the right thing, Democrats. Take this moment to tell us why you are better, not just why Trump is worse. Focusing only on the negative is how we got here. That's how we got candidates with more flaws than favorables. How we got to a place where violence has a place, both in words and deeds. So we get what you're against. We get what should scare us. We're all scared. Give us reason to believe in better, to be about what you are for. That is the right thing right now. And if done correctly, could decide this election. Now, takes us to Trump. He gets first crack at using the moment. Why? Because Cuomo's a Trumper. No, because he just got shot in the head. And people who are saying it was staged are stupid, okay? Anyone who says that should be ignored. They are not dealing with rational thought, okay? You got to have feel, but you got to surrender to fact, okay? He rose literally unbowed and defiant, strong, brave, objectively. Now, the question is, can he use this moment to rise figuratively, using this tragedy to pivot, to be the leader he's always said he is, but he has never been? Instead of outraging the few, can he now speak to the many and tell us why it's time to get back to decency and doing things instead of simply demonizing? Now, picking Vance as VP, I don't think is a step that way. I don't want to be unfair to the guy. He's got a great backstory, very smart. Hillbilly Elegy, great book, great movie, great backstory. But Vance, politically, is low road all the time as a MAGA convert. He was one of the first to blame what happened on Saturday on the left, on Biden. He has harsh positions on cultural and foreign issues. He's got an Ivy League education. He's got a great backstory. He's military service, veteran as VP. Veterans, I like him in public service, but he's not a unifier. So does that mean that Trump is going to use this moment as I suggest? It's easy to say no because of who he has been until now and because the outrage and division has gotten him here. And it's also rampant in his ranks. Did you see what happened between Representative Gates and the former Speaker McCarthy? I'm not going to characterize it. Watch.
What night are you speaking? Are you speaking tonight? One person. No. Hey, you're not. If you took that stage, you would get booed off of it. You would get booed off the stage.
Now, what is Gates doing? He's desperate for attention. He's desperate to draw McCarthy in, to show a fight with what they demonize as the establishment. Divide, divide, divide. Doesn't matter if it's red on red. It's all advantage all the time in an inextricable, inexorable battle to the bottom. That's what a binary political system of two parties that only care about what is worse, that's what it leads us to. Even eating your own. That's the problem. We need a leader to condemn cheap rancor and demonstrate like what Ronald Reagan did, that you don't have to hate to disagree, and that you can compromise without capitulating. Cooperation is not weakness. Will Trump do this? I don't know. Would it be the right thing right now? Yes. And just as I said with the Democrats, this move could decide the election. So, what can we expect? Let's take a look at the Democratic side of the ball now, because, the big speakers aren't there yet, and we'll get into it, and tonight's not Trump's night. But on the Democratic side, they got problems. So let's bring in a member of Congress, still supports Biden as the nominee, but recognizes what's happening in his party and is a leader now and certainly of the future. Illinois member of Congress, Raja Krishnamurthy. Representative, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So, do you believe this renewed effort to stop the early meeting of the DNC to basically pre-certify your nominee in the form of Joe Biden will be canceled?
I don't know. There's an I'm not an election law expert, certainly about Ohio election law. There's one fact which kind of gets a lot of people scratching their head right now. That law that you talked about, which would otherwise make a virtual nomination process moot or not necessary, doesn't go into effect until August 31st, weirdly. And so that is getting a lot of Democrats kind of concerned about Ohio Republicans mucking around or playing around with the process and luring the Democrats into doing something that
that's not the controlling factor right now. The controlling factor is a fringe element within your party, not a majority, mostly progressives, on the left side of the left, who are saying we don't want Biden. How strong is that? Is it growing? Could it make a difference, if not now, at the convention?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know because, I've been not in direct consultations with them. I have been in consultations with other members and the president directly. We were on Zoom calls with him this past weekend, some tough conversations. And I think that, I for one want to know exactly the plan for winning. I think that's the most important thing. And how do we defeat Donald Trump?
The way you defeat Donald Trump is not obsessing on the who, because you're going to lose that fight. Because Biden's built-in concern, you can't get rid of, which is that he's not going to make it 4 more years. We don't know the answer to that question. He could make it 14. Who knows? But you're not going to get away from that. It's got to be the why. Why? Your party has to become obsessed with arguing to the American people, especially now, because after Saturday, everybody's paying attention. Everybody's scared. No one likes how the politics is being practiced. So why are Democrats better instead of just why Donald Trump is so scary? Is Biden capable, or all of you capable, of bringing that to bear?
Yes, and we have to be. I mean, here's what I respectfully tell my constituents, and I think others do the same, which is, with regard to the economy, I think that people are really concerned about the economy. From where we were to where we are, we've made progress, but we have a long ways to go. And the question is, who's going to take us to where people really want to go? Is it someone who's forward-facing and thinking about the interests of your family and your children, or someone who has shown a pattern of kind of obsessing about his own grievances and his own relitigating the past? And so I think Joe Biden and the Democrats are forward-facing, and I think that is really the why for why we should be reelected.
I agree with you, but that's not the case you guys make. What you do, is the second part, though, Congressman. You tell me how bad he is, like I don't know, and what a threat he is to the democracy, and then I watch you guys messing with your own rules about your own democratic process about your primary twice. One, the original primary wasn't a real primary. It was basically a coronation of Biden, and now you're thinking of scrapping the rules out of convenience. So that's not so democratic either. Do you believe that the Democrats have enough ideas to be more than, you can't vote for Trump, he's too dangerous? Especially now. You can't really do that now after what happened Saturday. It's too frightening to too many. You saw what happened in that NBC interview. They had Biden, who I do not believe is the main culprit for our hostile political rhetoric, on his heels apologizing.
You know, I think that you're absolutely right. We have to be the party that's talking about the future. Well, how are we going to equip people with the skills to take the jobs of the future? How are we going to make sure we can educate not only children who go to college, but the 2/3 of Americans who don't have a four-year college degree? And then finally, among other things, how do we make sure that we allow people to access high quality and affordable health care? You know, this $35 a month insulin plan is very popular, and yet we're still debating whether we should have it or not. And so those are the types of questions I think we should be discussing.
Well, look, the good news is, if you look at the 2024 platform, in fact, in my podcast, the Chris Cuomo Project, I take you through the 20 promises the Republicans make. There's no mention of getting rid of the ACA, which they don't call Obamacare because they don't refer to it. No mention of reproductive rights. No mention of gay marriage, because they know those are now losers for them. The question is, what are winners for you? Yes, healthcare. But instead of college, trades, the artisan class, groceries, gas. You know, you can't shoot over everybody's head. You know, not everybody's planning for to be a lawyer or a doctor. They're planning to eat.
That's 100% correct. In fact, there's something called a paper ceiling. That's the ceiling that requires degrees, four-year college degrees for positions that don't need it to basically perform the skills required to do the job adequately. So I'm working with people like Byron Donalds, who I saw on the stage, and others to try to, and John James of Michigan, to tear the paper ceiling and make it so that people with skills can access the jobs of the future.
Good.
We need to get everyone off the bench into the economy and working in the same direction.
Good. And you got to break from the pack. If you're doing something with Donalds, you guys should come on TV together. Don't be afraid of the party, because the truth is, it's not worth it anymore. The affiliation's not enough. You're better off being your own brand. If you had to guess today, is it less than 30% chance that you guys pick someone else other than Biden at the convention?
So you're saying, is it less than 30% chance that we would pick someone other than Biden?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know the exact percentage, but that sounds about right to me. I believe that we should operate from the presumption of, okay, if this is the situation, how do we win right now with who we got? Show me the data, show me the plan, let's win.
Yeah, and let's say that you're not compelled. My problem with you guys is too late. You shouldn't have been asking these questions now. That's what your primary should have been for. And you're much better off focusing on what the pitch is than who's pitching it. I know the messenger is all important in politics, but the idea that you can swap him in with somebody and they're magically going to be better before people like me get to rake him or her over the coals for a couple of weeks, I think is hyper optimistic. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, I appreciate you being a straight talker and a fair broker. You always have a platform here to make the case to the American people.
Thank you so much, Chris.
All right. Be well and good luck. All right. Let's bring in the author of the must-read Substack, So What? Political commentator Chris Cillizza. Cuomo is wrong to focus on the why more than the who because
as much as we don't like to admit it, presidential races are functionally personality battles. People like to say that, man, I wish there was more policy. I just wish they talked about policy more. And I can tell you, both from the time I spent on TV and the time I spent in print, you know what people read? The confrontation between Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz. You know what they don't do? Let me read that 20-step climate change plan. So I think what's hard, Chris, is there's a divide between who we think we are and who we actually are. This is not breaking news, but I do think it plays out in a presidential race. I think if you just had a candidate who only talked about policy, that candidate would almost certainly lose, Republican or Democrat.
Okay, finesse point. Post-Saturday, the existential nature of hostility made brutally obvious creates an opportunity to use this moment to talk the right talk to people because they are afraid of the division.
Absolutely, yes. I think timing is everything in life and in politics. 4 months before an election, that's a really, really hard ask for people. I think you are right. It does create an opportunity. But again, I know we disagree on this because we've talked about this on and off air for years. I just think you need a who. You need a messenger who is able to carry that message in a credible and serious way. And look, Biden and Trump are just like fundamentally disqualified because 46% of the public won't listen to a word they say, even if they're 100% right. I mean, I think about Thursday night, Chris. If Donald Trump came out and gave a speech about we need to come together, look, I'm as big a culprit as anyone as it relates to division, which is 100% true as it relates to Trump. But we need to come together now. I don't think Democrats would be like, you know what? We do need to come together.
Hey, Chris,
right? So
Chris,
the messengers are just sort of off.
Chris, just for the people at home, Steve Scalise, you see walking out on now the member of Congress. The reason he walks with a limp is because when he was shot at the baseball game. He has recovered, but the idea that it didn't happen, it happened. He's been less wounded by that, and he is now addressing the ranks, and he is really all we should have needed to know about the power of division. He was shot, and many others were shot at by a left-wing lunatic that day, and you would think it would have been enough to wake up. Maybe when it's a former and could be future president, maybe we'll feel differently about it, but the counterbalance is I can't stop doing what got me here, Chris. Yep. I gotta feed the red meat. That's why I picked Vance. You know, there's nobody, more devoted than a convert. And I got this guy Vance who came out of the box Saturday saying Biden did this. That's who we are. Got to stick with it.
So the incentive structure is all screwed up. It's screwed up in journalism and it's screwed up in politics. So who do more people in this country know? Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, and I was just watching the air when you were interviewing the congressman, Tom Emmer, who was speaking and I thought gave a pretty good speech. Member of Republican leadership, guy from Minnesota, serious person, respected on both sides of the aisle. Of course they know Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You know MTG. She's a one-name person. Of course, it's an acronym. But let's do this. Stick with me, Chris. Let's see how Scalise is using his own experience to rally the crowd. Let's listen.
Assault on American energy once and for all. Now let's look at taxes. Biden and Harris want a $5 trillion tax hike. In our first 100 days, President Trump and a Republican majority will make the Trump tax cuts permanent. And yes, we will end taxes on tips and deliver another tax cut for working families. On the border, Biden and Harris opened it up to the entire world. Prisons are being emptied. President Trump and a Republican majority will repass H.R. 2, the strongest border security bill in decades. We will lock down the border, and yes, we will finish building the wall. Our most sacred right as citizens, voting. Biden and Harris want illegals to vote now that they've opened up the border. Republicans will repass the SAVE Act to block illegal aliens from voting in our elections.
All right, so Steve Scalise is feeding red meat on some of the big-ticket concerns for Republicans. The only thing he discussed in the affirmative was building the wall. To me, the wall, we've never been a wall away from being safe in the southern border. The physical barrier is just one ingredient in a stew that the men and women who do that job daily and the strategic side will tell you about. They need rule changes more than they want physical structures. But it's red meat. I am surprised, Chris Cillizza, that Steve Scalise didn't use what happened to him as the headline that, hey, look, God forbid what just happened to Trump, but we know this lesson. Ronald Reagan was everybody keeps talking about Reagan at this convention. Yep. He was the symbol of service with a smile. And we need to get back to that because that's when conservatives are at their best. He didn't, because...
So let me say that one of the reasons I both like and admire you is your unrelenting optimism about politics. Because there's no way Steve Scalise is going to get up in front of the Republican National Convention, this Republican National Convention, and deliver that message. Though I don't want to stamp out this important point. There is an opportunity that does exist here, but I don't want to repeat myself, but the incentive structure is screwed up. The incentive structure is 100% throw red meat, talk about the things that we're different on, highlight our divisions, as opposed to say, hey, look, we can all agree that we shouldn't have one of the two candidates for president almost murdered in public, right? We can agree on that. That would suggest we need to take down the rhetoric. The problem is the rhetoric is what the bases want.
I know, but that's the problem. The base is really just a fringe. And we have magnified that minority mostly through social media, and lazy journalists like me have used them as vox populi. When every time we do a measure, we realize social media is not reality. It's exaggerated forms of people, and it's proxies and all other kind of nonsense. And here's why. Am I an optimist? I don't know. I'm just...
You are an optimist.
I believe this.
I've known you long enough.
Chris, we're in Generation X, okay? Generation X still knew edge, still knew hard, still knew latchkey, still knew what it was like to get hit. We are obsessed with trying to get better. As people, as partners, as parents, it's all I focus on. Why do I suck so bad as a husband? Why do I suck so bad as a dad? Why do I suck so bad at my job? How do I get better at these things? And I believe that there's a collective mentality like that in our country. The self-help business is huge. People are now taking Ozempic like crazy because we're all so desperate to get better. I just believe that it should translate into us requiring it of others as well. Here's the Speaker of the House. Let's see if he changes my mind.
This has always been an important principle to us. We in the Republican Party are the law and order team. We always have been, and we always will be, the advocates for the rule of law. And we all know that that principle, as well as many others, is in serious jeopardy today. See, we've come to a moment in America where the basic things that we once took for granted are being openly challenged like never before. My friends, we are no longer just in a battle between two opposing political parties. We are, but it's not just ours versus these anymore. We're now in the midst of a struggle between two completely different visions of who we are as Americans and what our country will be. The Republican Party stands for the foundational truths that made America the greatest nation in the history of the world. We are the most free, the most powerful, the most benevolent nation that has ever been. It's not even close. It's not even close. But we have no guarantee that this grand experiment in self-governance can endure unless we respond to the call to keep it. 248 years ago, we boldly proclaimed in our Declaration that all men are created equal, not born equal, created equal, and that we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. See, we understand that our rights do not come from government. They come from God. There's another thing that we recognize. We recognize that we are made in His image. And because of that, every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And your value is not related in any way to the color of your skin, what zip code you live in, where you come from, what your talents are, or what you can contribute to society. Your value is inherent because it is given to you by your Creator. That's what we stand for. I speak a lot about what I call the 7 core principles of American conservatism. What do we stand for as Republicans, they want to know? I think it boils down to a few things: individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Indeed, those are the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but they're actually the core principles of our republic itself. And while they resonate in our hearts and in the hearts of most Americans, Listen to me. The radical, woke, progressive left has disdain for those principles, all right? They have a very different vision for what America should become. They want to tear down those foundations and remold us into some sort of borderless, lawless, Marxist, socialist utopia. We're here to say, not on our watch. We will not allow that to happen.
You know why I will prefer Speaker Johnson to Scalise? I like boring. To Salisa's point, it's not as engaging. Look, my pushback on Johnson, and I know he takes his faith very seriously, I choose to have faith as well. I'm not devout the way he is that I have a problem with saying our rights come from God. That works for me as a Christian. It does not work philosophically in terms of politics. It does not work in a secular society. And there's a whole discussion you can have, but in America, you know, we got to remember that it's not all about people who believe one way. And if you believe that we're made in God's image, why don't we act that way? Why do we all wear bracelets that say WWJD and then never ask the question before we speak to each other or act, certainly on the public sphere? Now, Chris Cillizza, I appreciate you watching this with me so far. We got a long way to go. I love sharing moments of history with you. Appreciate your acuity. You're more right than I am, but it's a good balance. You got to have the right guy. You got to, for someone to be so right, you got to have someone who's wrong. You're welcome. Chris Cillizza, I'll speak to you again soon.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Take care. Be well.
All right. So we talk about Saturday. I see it as an opportunity for us to get to a better place, but you got to also deal with why it put us in such a horrible place. Former President Trump was shot in the head. And if not for a twist of his neck, there would have been an ugly twist of fate in this country right now. And I don't know where we would be. I don't know where I would be standing. I don't know what I'd be watching. The director of the Secret Service said last night that the buck stops with her. That's called empty accountability. No kidding. It stops with her. She's in charge. She also then brought in the local police and threw them under the bus by saying local police were in the building that the guy climbed on top of. And they were in the area and they were responsible for the outer perimeter of the building where the shooter positioned himself and fired from. Well, which is it? Is it on you or are you going to blame the people who are under your watch? You see what I'm saying? So let's focus on what matters most. There's one scary question that people only want to talk about online where there's no accountability. Here I have accountability, but we have to ask the question. Do we have any reason to believe at this point that there was anything intentional about creating an opportunity for Trump to be shot at? All right? Let's bring in Republican member of Congress Michael Waltz, former Green Beret, who has been talking to members of Trump's Secret Service detail, and Republican member of Congress, former Army sniper, Representative Corey Mills. Definitely got the right guys for this one. Gentlemen, thank you for taking time from the convention to discuss this with me, but I know it matters to you as well. So let me start with you, Corey. That's the question. Do you believe at this point that there is a reason to be suspicious that somebody tried to make this happen other than the shooter?
Well, Chris, I think until we rule out the full investigation, I don't think that we can actually rule out anything. I think that we have to look at malice. We have to look at negligence. We have to do dereliction of duty, but also intent. We also have to wonder whether this is purposeful. The mistakes that were made are very, very basic 101 on advance and on counter-sniper operations. When you're talking about something that's 160 yards away, which is perfectly adjacent to the speaker's stage, and when you're talking about 26 minutes that he was on the rooftop, a law enforcement officer had approached him and did not have an emergency coordinated comm structure to go sniper on the roof to get the Secret Service up there. There's too much about this that screams setup, and I hope that I'm wrong. And that's why I think not having the FBI, who has actually been used to abuse the FISA process 287,000 times as the benchmark of the investigation, Corey, but keeping it in-house in Congress.
Let's talk about the plus and minus of keeping it in Congress. And Michael, I want to bring you in as well, but let's listen together to Vivek Ramaswamy a little bit.
2024. What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? It means we believe in the ideals of 1776. It means we believe in merit. that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why we will seal the southern border on day one. Thank you. It means the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not unelected bureaucrats in the deep state. These are not black ideas or white ideas. They are not even Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They are American ideas that we fought a revolution to secure. And the man who will revive these ideals in the United States of America is your next president, the 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. If you want to seal the border, vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump. If you want to reignite the economy in this country, vote Trump. If you want to revive national pride in this country, vote Trump. If you want to make America great again, vote Trump. But there is one more reason I'm going to ask you to vote Trump, and it's the most important one. It's the one the media won't talk about, but it's the truth. Donald Trump is the president who will actually unite this country, not through empty words, but through action. Because you know what? Success is unifying. Excellence is unifying. That's who we are as Americans. That's who we've always been. To those of you watching this at home tonight, I'd like to deliver a message that the media doesn't want you to hear from the Republican Party. Our message to black Americans is this. The media has tried to convince you for decades that Republicans don't care about your communities, but we do. We want for you what we want for every American. Safe neighborhoods, clean streets, good jobs, a better life for your children, and a justice system that treats everyone equally, regardless of your skin color and regardless of your political beliefs. Our message to every legal immigrant in this country is this. You're like my parents. You deserve the opportunity to secure a better life for your children in America. But our message to illegal immigrants is also this. We will return you to your country of origin, not because you're all bad people, but because you broke the law. And the United States of America was founded on the rule of law. Our message to millennials, speaking as one myself, yes, it's true. Our government sold us a false bill of goods with the Iraq War and the 2008 financial crisis, loading up our national debt that falls on our generation's shoulders, telling us that if we took out college loans, we'd somehow get a head start on the American dream when it hasn't worked out that way. But we can't just be cynical about our country because the United States of America is still the last best hope that we have, and we deserve a better class of politician, one who actually tells us the truth, even if it comes with some mean tweets from time to time. And our message to Gen Z is this. You're going to be the generation that actually saves this country. You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative. Say you want to get married, have kids, teach them to believe in God and pledge allegiance to their country. Because you know what? Fear has been infectious in this country, but courage can be contagious too. That too is what it means to be an American. And you know what? If you're at home and you disagree with everything I just said, our message to you is this. We will still defend to the death your right to say it, because that is who we are as Americans. We are the country where we can disagree like hell and still get together at the dinner table at the end of it. That is the America I know. That is the America we miss. We do not have to be ancient Rome. We don't have to be this nation in decline. We can still be a nation in our ascent. A nation whose best days, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, a nation whose best days are actually still ahead of us. Still on our way to that shining city on a hill, that country where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, or how long your last name is, that you will still get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we will revive this November when we send Donald J. Trump back to the White House. Thank you all. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you. Thank you.
Vivek Ramaswamy showing once again why people like that he can talk the talk. He certainly can. Also, once again, showing what kept him from really being a legitimate player at the presidential level, which is obviously he doesn't have any experience, but also that this is a man who's very heavy on division. And it is the right message now that we should come together. But this is not a guy who was saying that he wanted to break bread with any Democrats all throughout the election. And I know the old rule, right? You go far to the right in the primary and you come back to the middle for the general. But that's also what got us into this hole, right? Because over time, moving back and forth does what? It wears it away, and eventually whatever that fabric it is breaks. And that's what happened. We are paralyzed and polarized. They don't do any of these things in Congress. They don't build the wall. They don't finish anything. They don't fix the border. They don't fix any of the concerns that you have about economy or regulations. They don't do anything because opposition is enough of a position for them. So I like the talk. It's not the best agent of change giving it because he's been such a rabidly divisive person. The media doesn't want you to know that the Republicans are best for black voters as if they all live in the hood, in the ghetto, as Vivek Ramaswamy seems to be assuming, right? You black people in those broken communities with all those gangs, because that's where you all live, right? Right? You're a monolith, right? It's not like any of you have ever made it to any legitimate success in society, have you? You see what I'm saying? It's out of touch. If you look at those communities, you try to attach what people see as progress or what has kept progress from happening in major cities. They'll say, well, yeah, they're all Democrat run, but where does the funding come from? States. Where do the states get a lot of it from for urban centers? Federal. You show me legislation and initiatives where Republicans have been pushing hard for the lower socioeconomic ladders in major cities. It's the record that creates the problem, not the rhetoric, and certainly not the media. Can we do better? Should black voters default to the Democratic Party by reflex? I hope not. I hope you make people make the case to you, whatever your situation and priorities are in life. A lot of voters of color have different priorities. People should be making the case, but we're here to correct the case they make. All right, we're going to take a break. I want to be on camera when we have Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Really interesting to see how they shape their message. They both want to be leaders of this country in the future. What will they say? How will they balance? We've got two great minds coming up. NewsNation correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera and former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney coming up. All right? Thank you for being with NewsNation. Stay with us.
NewsNation. To find News Nation on your screen, go to joinnn.com or stream News Nation on Apple CarPlay and Alexa.
Crypto Fits, crypto breaking news.
Brought to you by ReadingBitcoinCenter.com as we dive into some crypto lingo. From mainstream media to most corners of the internet, crypto and the entire language of related terms that have sprung up alongside the investing phenomenon are everywhere. As we continue our crypto glossary, B, Bitcoin, the original, largest, and best-known cryptocurrency. Buy the dip, an investing strategy involving buying an asset when its price has fallen to reap the benefits when its price rises again. Blockchain, the underlying technology is used by nearly all cryptocurrencies. A blockchain is essentially a complete ledger of transactions held simultaneously by multiple nodes on a network.
Follow the latest in crypto and NFT news at CryptoFits.io.
This is The Making of America from the Jefferson Media Group. How do you eliminate a nuclear threat without starting a nuclear war? That was the crisis facing President John F. Kennedy for 13 days in October of 1962 as the entire world watched in fear. U.S. spy planes had confirmed the Soviet Union was installing nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missiles in Cuba, capable of reaching America's heartland. A direct attack on those installations was not an option, as Kennedy expected that would evoke possible direct military confrontations with the Soviet Union. However, a breakthrough was reached when the Soviets agreed to withdraw their long-range missiles from Cuba if the U.S. would remove their medium-range missiles from Italy and Turkey. This has been The Making of America. I'm Michael Emerson, and you can visit us at jeffersonmediagroup.com.
In Milwaukee, there's word that the former president is going to be showing up at the convention, and when he does, we will bring it to you, as well as key speakers. You have Nikki Haley, who's going to be speaking. You have Governor DeSantis, who's going to be speaking. We'll bring it. Also, we want to discuss the state of play going on. I got a little clip there talking about the investigation into what happened on Saturday and who needs to do that. I want to discuss the state of play with that investigation, but also the politics coming out of Saturday with two men who understand the country and understand politics done right and wrong very well. News Nation correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera, and News Nation political contributor, Trump's former acting White House chief of staff, former member of Congress, Mick Mulvaney. Good to have you both. So, do we agree that coming out of Saturday, there is a moment which is an opportunity for a pivot on both sides of the ball, but certainly for former President Trump? Is there an opportunity to be had here? Do we all agree yes?
I will defer to Geraldo. Agreed yesterday.
Yeah? You agreed yesterday? You don't agree today?
I agreed. Not after hearing the tone and tenor of the speeches. They also, Carrie Lake and so forth, they're also, retro, pre-assassination attempt. All red meat for the base. It bothers me. I also want to say that I didn't fully grasp the significance of Tucker Carlson's very prominent role that he played coming in that very dramatic moment when the president, the former president, the 45th president, came into the arena, that stunning moment, and then stood with his family and Tucker Carlson. What was Tucker Carlson there for? And then you read in the New York Times that Tucker Carlson lobbied for J.D. Vance's selection as vice president, and he warned President Trump against the so-called neocons, people like Rubio and Bergram, and said that if one of those guys was selected as the VP, then intelligence agencies, crazy story, would have every incentive to kill President Trump to get a neocon as the president of the United States, and lead us into nuclear war. It was like a nuts kind of conversation.
Yeah,
but it's great reporters for the New York Times. I I don't get it. It seems very
just
troubling
because
to me.
somebody,
I wonder why it hasn't gotten more attention.
Because I think that there's a false premise involved, Geraldo, and I'll pivot to Mick on this. Is there any reason for you to believe that the former president or anybody around him looks to Tucker Carlson as a bellwether of rational reactions in this campaign?
No, I don't think so. Chris, you asked a really good question, which is the door open for Trump to do something different, for Trump to be sort of a unifier? The door was open for Biden. You're the president. You get to go anytime you want to. He spoke on Sunday night. He gave a speech that, was okay. It was full of sort of platitudes, but he didn't really, follow through and say, look, we need to lower the temperature, and it starts with me. I'm going to change now. Everything that I'm hearing, look, Kari Lake's speech was awful. It just was. But the message has gone out to most of the speakers saying, look, we want to change the tone of this debate. We want to be more conciliatory. We want to be more unifying. If that's where Donald Trump is going, if that is where the Republican Party is going, that's an earthquake in American politics. No one thinks he's capable of doing that. But the country is ready for it. Biden had a chance on Sunday night. He blew it. If Trump takes it on Thursday night, if the rest of the party takes it for the next couple of days, it could have huge implications, not only in the White House, but all the way down ballot.
All right, let's take a quick break here. We'll keep our discussion going, but I don't want to miss when Trump comes. And I just want to remind people, I did a big sit down. I speak on a semi-regular basis with Tucker Carlson. I'm trying to understand him. I appreciate him admitting that he was just intentionally being a beep to me when he was on TV at Fox. But he is not a guy who I believe is always anchored in reality. He believes in a lot of conspiratorial things. That's the last thing Trump needs in his ear. Why was he with him, Geraldo? Because he's a big star and like the Republican mascot of defiance. That's why. 4 minutes, 35 seconds. We'll be back for when Trump comes in, and we'll keep talking with these two great men.
Welcome, Vice Presidential nominee.
Assets to bring Yale Law School, Marine Corps, so forth. Mentored by Amy Chua at Yale Law School. She encouraged him to write Hillbilly Elegy. She also mentored my daughter, Simone, at Yale Law School, so I have a connection to J.D. Vance of Ohio. I live in Ohio, as you know. Now, I think that he'll be a feisty, ideological vice president. I think that he'll be active. He certainly demographically broadens the appeal of the Trump ticket, but people load. Sorry, it's Leland Vittert calling. He certainly broadens the appeal.
That Vittert,
of the,
always trying to take my airtime. Yeah, but Geraldo, how do you factor in the fact you say feisty? Saturday, the last thing we needed was for somebody to blame Biden for what happened to Trump. Vance came right out of the box,
also true,
saying exactly that. Now, so what was that about, Mick? Was that about him just showing his bona fides of an attack dog for Trump, or is that what we need in this country right now? Is a guy saying Biden's responsible for this?
I guess you could look at it that way. You might also just look at it, that's the natural reaction. That's sort of where my head went, which is the rhetoric that the left has been using against Donald Trump. Face it, they've called him every name in the book. There's many, many Democrats who really do think he's the next